African nation largely peaceful. Election sees unabated violence. Another youth-led mass movement. An autocratic reign under focus. Why are hundreds dead in an African nation?
On your screen, you can see the intense and extensive protests happening in Tanzania. These demonstrations broke out on 29th October in Tanzania's city Dar es Salaam. While the main opposition party has claimed that at least 700 people have passed away in these protests, the government has been silent on the issue. You can see the protesters burning buses and gas stations and vandalizing public property. Today is the fourth day of these protests where curfews have been imposed and the internet has been cut off in major cities of Tanzania. You can also see on your screens where military has been deployed, in fact in cities across Dar es Salaam, in Matswana and Arusha to break up protests. Till now, the authorities have used tear gas, live ammunitions. Hello and welcome. You're watching Explained by NewsX with me, Sabri Jindal. Today we're discussing the situation in Tanzania. You've seen the condition in Tanzania. Now let's talk about why these protests are breaking out. The protests are happening against the government of President Samia Suluhu Hassan. The young protesters are taking to the streets and cities across Tanzania to denounce the October presidential elections as unfair. They are accusing the government of undermining democracy by suppressing the main opposition leaders. On your screens, you can see a young protester tearing down the poster of President Hassan. Tanzania. Officially, the United Republic of Tanzania is a country in East Africa within the African Great Lakes region. It is bordered by Uganda and northwest Kenya to the northeast, the Indian Ocean to the east, in fact, Mozambique and Malawi to the south, Zambia to the southwest, and Rwanda, Burundi and Democratic Republic of the Congo to the west. According to the 2024 estimate, Tanzania has a population of around 67.5 million, making it the most populous country located entirely south of the equator. Full independence to Tanzania came in December 1961 from the United Kingdom. Julius Kambarge Nyerere, a socialist leader who led Tanganyika, now part of the Tanzania from colonial rule, was elected president in 1961. The politics of Tanzania takes place in a framework of a unitary presidential democratic republic whereby the president of Tanzania is both head of the state and head of the government, and a multi-party system, but this has not been the case always. From independence in 1961 until the mid-1980s, Tanzania has one-party state. It was a one-party state with a socialist model of economic development. Beginning in the mid-1980s under the administration of President Ali Hassan, Tanzania undertook a number of political and economic reforms. In February 1992, the government decided to adopt multi-party democracy. Legal and constitutional changes led to the registration of 11 political parties. Since the creation of a multi-party system, CCM has won the past 6 general elections in 1995, 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015 as well as 2020. Jakaya Kikwete, its presidential candidate in 2005, won by a landslide, receiving more than 80% of the popular vote. In 2020 elections, the CCM won 256 of the 264 constituencies, continuing to hold an outright majority in the National Assembly. John Magufuli, as a candidate in 2020, garnered over 84% of the vote. He has also won in 2015 and served as the president until his death in 2021. Under his presidency, Tanzania experienced one of the strongest economic growths on the continent. The figure was 6% on average per year, according to the IMF. Tanzania moved from the category of low income countries to lower middle income countries. However, Magufuli's government had autocratic tendencies. This was seen in restrictions on freedom of speech, restrictions on LGBTQ rights, and a crackdown on members of the political opposition and civil society groups. Magufuli was accused of repressing opposition to his leadership, including laws restricting opposition rallies, the suspension of the Swahili language Mavio newspaper in 2016, and threatening to shut down radio and television stations that did not pay license fees. There was also a 2018 bill that required blogs and other forms of online content providers to hold government licenses with content restrictions. Taking a page from Magufuli's notebook, Samia Suluhu Hassan, his successor, has also the country's first female president, did something similar before the election of October 2025. Under President Hassan, authorities escalated a coordinated campaign to suppress political opposition and dissent. Tundu Lissu, chairperson of Shamida, the main opposition party, remains in custody facing treason charges for remarks made on 3rd April 2025. In this remark, Tundu Lissu was urging his supporters to boycott the elections. In fact, on 12th April 2025, the Independent National Electoral Commission of Tanzania disqualified Chadema from participating in the elections. This disqualification extends to all elections until 2030. Further undermining political pluralism, the Registrar of Political Parties annulled Chadema's secretariat appointment on 13th May 2025, stripping key leaders of their positions. Although the High Court of Tanzania overturned the decision on 28th August, the registrar has refused to comply. Another opposition party is ACT Wazalendo. Its presidential candidate, Lahunga Mipin, was also disqualified by INEC on 27th August, citing procedural irregularities. His disqualification follows his defection from the ruling CCM. The High Court ruled the disqualification unconstitutional on 11 September, affirming Mimpa's right to fair hearing. Nevertheless, INEC disqualified him again on 15 September following an objection by the Attorney General. The disqualification of Lissu and Nipa and subsequent lack of independence of Tanzania's electoral institutions form the backbone of the protests. This curb of democracy is also enabled by the laws passed by Hassan's government. The first is political parties affirm Laws Amendment Act 2024 introduced extensive new bureaucratic requirements for political parties, creating multiple opportunities for government interference in political party activities. Another law passed is Electronic and Postal Communications Online Content Amendment Regulations 2025. This law enforces stricter compliance requirements on online content providers and expands regulatory oversight mechanisms, creating additional barriers to free expression and information sharing. On October 29, 2025, Tanzania went to the polls, but the mood on the ground was far from celebratory. Years of disqualification over the systematic choking of the opposition and the lack of any real electoral choice were palpable. Empty polling stations across the country told their own story of distrust as well as defiance. by mid-morning in Dar es Salaam. That silent frustration erupted into the streets. Hundreds of protesters gathered, hurling stones at police and setting tires and petrol stations ablaze. Police responded with tear gas and imposed a curfew. For a while, the protesters retreated, but the unrest was far from over. As the day progressed, internet connectivity across the country was disrupted shortly after protesters in the Kimara and Ubango neighborhoods torched a rapid transport bus and a gas station. The next day, which is October 30th, tensions escalated. The provisional results were announced, showing President Samia Suluhu Hassan sweeping the election with overwhelming majorities. The announcement sparked fresh anger. Protesters re-emerged, calling the results fraudulent and demanding change. By November 1st, President Hassan had been declared the winner, securing 97.66% of the vote. The landslide result triggered a new wave of violence. Protesters targeted homes of ruling party supporters. Security forces were deployed in full strength. The Army Chief, Major General Jacob John Mukunda, labeled protesters criminals as tanks and troops moved into major cities. International reactions were swift. The European Parliament denounced the elections as fraudulent. The United States issued a travel advisory and a security alert for its citizens. The United Nations called for an independent probe into the violence, while the opposition vowed to escalate their movement until democratic reforms were ensured. Amnesty International estimates that roughly 100 people have been killed. The official figures remain undisclosed. On the other hand, the opposition parties have declared a death toll of 700. The unrest has spilled beyond borders. In the town of Namanga, divided between Tanzania and Kenya, protesters fled into Kenya to escape Tanzanian police. In response, officers allegedly fired tear gas canisters across the border. Tanzania's nation is in turmoil and a democracy under duress. Will Hassan's leadership be toppled, or will these protests bring any real change in how the government functions? Only time will tell.
African nation largely peaceful. Election sees unabated violence. Another youth-led mass movement. An autocratic reign under focus. Why are hundreds dead in an African nation?